Bitcoin is digital energy, it's digital capital, it's the basis of digital credit, it's the basis of digital money. It's developing very rapidly. We're making great inroads. You know, you're like, well, the 4-year cycle is dead. Well, the irony is the people that are saying that haven't waited 4 years. Like, we've only been 95 days since the peak of the cycle. Okay? So how about, I think that if you actually assess Bitcoin's performance on a rolling 4-year moving average, you see a progression that looks pretty bullish. I think 2026 is going to be a great year for Bitcoin.
Is Bitcoin a disappointment? If you look at the price action over the last 90 days, a segment of the market would say yes. They see a flat end to 2025 and assume the momentum has stalled. But Michael Saylor has a different message. You are looking at the wrong clock. In a recent high-stakes discussion, the MicroStrategy founder and Bitcoin's most prominent advocate dismantled the disappointment narrative. He argues that while the retail crowd is fixated on 100-day price candles, the fundamental structure of the global financial system shifted beneath our feet in 2025. Saylor begins by addressing the elephant in the room, the short memory of the crypto community. He points out a staggering irony. Bitcoin hit an all-time high in early October of 2025, literally the first week of the final quarter. Because it didn't end the year on that high, many investors labeled the year a failure. Before we go on, just a quick reminder, liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and commenting helps this reach more people who care about Bitcoin and macro trends. Appreciate the support.
I don't think it's a disappointing year. The only way in which it's disappointing is the price at the very end of the year. Do you know when the all-time high was?
Would it have been about August?
October 6th.
October 6th, okay.
Early October, first week of October. You know how many days it's been since the all-time high of Bitcoin?
I mean, must be like 100 days or something.
Yeah, Grok thinks like 95 days.
Yeah.
Okay, so, by the way, October, the last quarter of the year is October, November, December. Literally at the first week of the last quarter of the year, Bitcoin hit an all-time high. So, in what way is it a disappointing year? It's this entire community has very short memory, and whatever happened in the past 5 days dominates the conversation. But if I look at 2025, I think in 2024 we had 30 to 60 companies that had Bitcoin on their balance sheet, and by the end of 2025 we had like 200. Okay, so the fundamentals look pretty good to me. We hit an all-time high. We added 100 companies with Bitcoin on the balance sheet. I think my company raised something like $25 billion and it all went into Bitcoin. So we bought $25 billion of Bitcoin in 2025. Okay, this entire journey, Danny, started in August of 2020 with a $250 million purchase. Okay, so 10x times 250 is 2.5 billion. We bought 100 times as much Bitcoin in 2025 as we did in August of 2020. And when we bought in August of 2020, that was the greatest amount of capital ever deployed in the Bitcoin network that anybody could remember in the history of the world. So, so 100x more than that strikes me as being a pretty good fundamental progression. You know, if I tick off what happened in 2025, we hit the all-time high. We had 100 Bitcoin companies come online. Fair value accounting for Bitcoin, was instituted at the beginning of the year. It's crippling to the asset class. If you can only lose money, you can never make money. So if we're going to actually institutionalize and commercialize Bitcoin and globalize Bitcoin, if you want everybody on Earth to use Bitcoin and every company on Earth to use Bitcoin, you had to cure some fundamental problems. One, when we bought Bitcoin in 2020, our insurance company dropped us. We got de-insured. A lot of people got debanked. We got, in essence, when the accounting system said it's indefinite intangible, we can't make money, you got deprofitized, And when we rolled into the first week of 2020, what happened? We got our insurance back. For 4 years, I had to underwrite the insurance of the company. The company at one point had 20, 30, 40 billion dollars of assets. We couldn't buy a $40 million insurance policy.
Wow.
Like, strategy wouldn't exist if I had not personally insured the company with my own personal assets. It wouldn't have happened. So we got our insurance back in 2025. We got our profits back in 2025. We went to fair value accounting, and now it's possible for a company to make money. We had the corporate alternative minimum tax question hanging over our head. Is there going to be an unrealized capital gains tax on public companies holding Bitcoin? That was resolved with positive guidance from the administration in 2025. So we didn't have an unrealized capital gains tax hit us. Then we got legitimized as the primary and the greatest global digital commodity in the world by the administration in 2025. That happened at the White House summit and with a television interview that David Sachs gave. And then we hit an all-time high, and if I look at all those things, and by the way, at the beginning of the year, I couldn't get a nickel loan on $1 billion of Bitcoin collateral. A nickel. So we were debanked. There was no credit. And by the end of the year, the majority of the major banks in the United States are extending credit against IBIT, and like a quarter of them had announced plans to start extending credit against BTC. So I would say we start 2026, and by the way, JP Morgan and Morgan Stanley both talking about buying, selling, handling Bitcoin. So now you've got bankers moving with bank acceptance. You got positive guidance from the Treasury Department for crypto assets on a bank balance sheet. You got a pro-Bitcoin, pro-crypto head of the CFTC and Mike Selig. You got a pro-crypto, pro-Bitcoin head of the SEC and Paul Atkins. You got a pro-crypto, pro-Bitcoin president, cabinet member. You got universal utterance. You also had the commercialization of the Bitcoin derivatives market on the CME. We had all of the handcuffs taken off of IBIT stock options. You also got in-kind create and redemption, where you could swap $1 million of Bitcoin for $1 million of IBIT and vice versa. Swap $1 million of IBIT for $1 million of Bitcoin without a taxable event. So if I had a checklist of all the fundamentals necessary for the asset to be commercialized and globalized and institutionalized, you got everything that you wanted in 2025. And you even got an all-time high. You just didn't get an all-time high on the last day of the year.
To understand why Saylor is so bullish on 2026, we have to look at the checklist of hurdles Bitcoin cleared in 2025. These weren't just small wins. They were the removal of existential threats. In 2024, roughly 30 to 60 public companies held Bitcoin. By the end of 2025, that number surged to over 200. MicroStrategy alone raised $25 billion in 2025 to deploy into Bitcoin. To put that in perspective, when Saylor first bought $250 million worth in 2020, it was the largest capital deployment anyone could remember. In 2025, he did 100 times that amount.
What do you think is going to happen in 2026?
Look, I think that trying to guess where the market goes over a 100-day time frame is a fool's errand. Like I literally just said 95 days ago, we were at an all-time high, and you're complaining about Bitcoin price action. Like, we have the attention, of sixth graders. Not even sixth graders.
It's not complaining. It's
Name
more
one
I'm surprised.
thing in your life you accomplished in less than 100 days. Like you can't. You're supposed to you can't have a baby in less than 100 days. You can't get a college degree in less than 100 days. How many companies were started and declared successful in less than 100 days? Was what Bitcoin did made successful in 94 days,
Absolutely
right?
not.
I mean, if you actually did a test on every single human endeavor for the last 100,000 years, Like, and you said, well, I'm going to cancel them all if they weren't successful on the 93rd day. Like, first of all, nothing and none of us would be here, right? So I think it's a mistake to fixate on short frequency events. The whole message of Bitcoin is you're supposed to have a low time preference. So I think that if you're an investor, if you're buying a company, if you're investing in a company, expecting it to be successful in less than 4 years just marks you as naive.
Mm-hmm.
Like, name a venture capitalist that would say that if the company that I invested in isn't a screaming success in less than 4 years, that I'm just going to sell my investment.
Yeah, it doesn't exist.
Yeah, it doesn't exist. So if you're an investor, you need a 4-year time frame. But if you're a progressive, if you're an ideologue, okay, so you got up and you decided that you wanted to change the world by spreading an ideology, you probably need a 10-year time frame. I think that if your goal is to see Bitcoin commercialized, you really shouldn't be analyzing, or you shouldn't be assessing your success with a frequency of 10 weeks or even 10 months. Mm-hmm. So I mean, what does it matter what happens in 2026 with the price, right? Do you know, take electricity. You know how long it took to go from 4% of factories running on electricity to 75% of factories? 30 years. Okay, so if you're an electricity maxi and you think that, by the way, electricity is probably the single greatest development of our lifetime. Take away electricity, all the cities die, Florida becomes uninhabitable. Hospitals don't work, refrigeration doesn't work, half the planet dies. Mm-hmm. And so I give you the gift of clean, invisible, efficient energy that revolutionizes the world, and it still takes 30 years before 70% of the people agree with you. Okay, so Bitcoin is digital energy, it's digital capital, it's the basis of digital credit, it's the basis of digital money. It's developing very rapidly. We're making great inroads. You're like, well, the 4-year cycle is dead. Well, the irony is the people that are saying that haven't waited 4 years. Like, we've only been 95 days since the peak of the cycle. Mm-hmm. Okay? So how about, I think that if you actually assess Bitcoin's performance on a rolling 4-year moving average, you see a progression that looks pretty bullish. I think 2026 is going to be a great year for Bitcoin.
What do you think of all the companies that are still doing the very simple, like, sell equity, buy Bitcoin playbook?
Well, I guess what I would say is everybody in the world can buy Bitcoin as part of their investment, but not everybody is going to have as much as me. Mm-hmm. But they could all buy it. I'm not skeptical of any of them if they buy it. Every family can buy Bitcoin. Some families will have more Bitcoin than other families. Mm-hmm. I'm not skeptical of a family's decision. Every company can buy Bitcoin. Some companies will have more Bitcoin than others. It's a good idea for all of them to buy it, right?
Whether they're sort of cash flow positive businesses or not.
If a company is not cash flow positive, then it's just not a good company, right?
But we see a lot of these companies crop up that really don't have a business. All they're doing is trying to issue debt and buy Bitcoin.
Okay. Well, aren't there plenty of people, like individuals, that don't have a business and they buy Bitcoin too? Mm-hmm. Are you going to criticize them?
No, I just don't know why.
Like, if you're not as rich as Bill Gates and you buy Bitcoin, should I criticize you?
No, of course not. But the problem I have, I guess, is why would anyone buy shares in that company as opposed to one like Strategy?
Well, every company has a different value proposition, and the answer. By the way, Danny, like, the whole point. The message I've delivered every day for the past 5 years is buy Bitcoin because there's a lot of counterparty risk when you invest in a company. Mm-hmm. Like, why do you buy Nvidia? Why do you buy Apple? Why do you buy, Coca-Cola? Why do you buy Disney? Why do you buy an airline? Right? There's the old story, how do you become a millionaire? Start with $1 billion and invest in an airline. Okay, the world's full of companies that are bad investments, right? The world's full of them. There's 400 million companies. So the question for you is, why haven't you invested in any of the 400 million? It's like,
because I buy Bitcoin.
Michael Saylor's message is clear. Stop looking at the 95-day dip and start looking at the 200 companies, the fair value accounting, and the institutional credit lines. 2025 was the year the foundation was poured. 2026 is the year the skyscraper goes up. The counterparty risk of investing in traditional companies, the airlines that lose billions, or the tech giants that face antitrust suits, makes Bitcoin the only logical choice for those seeking pure digital capital. As Saylor famously says, why invest in one of 400 million companies when you can just buy the network they all eventually have to run on?